Welcome to the Relationship Recovery Podcast, hosted by Jessica Knight, a certified life coach who specializes in narcissistic and emotional abuse. This podcast is intended to help you identify manipulative and abusive behavior, set boundaries with yourself and others, and heal the relationship with yourself so you can learn to love in a healthy way.
My name is Jessica Knight, and thanks for being here. If you have not watched the current season of Love is Blind, Season 3, that's what this episode is about, and I am not going to go into explaining the ins and outs. I am going to talk through this episode as if you've seen it. So, apologies if that's annoying to you, but this is an extra episode that I'm putting out because I have been so triggered by what I've seen. In the past, I've watched reality TV and have felt triggered before. Two specific examples that I think about are early episodes of Southern Charm with Catherine Dennis and Thomas Ravenel, when Catherine was experiencing birth complications, when Catherine wasn't being supported. There was even an incident when he went to a strip club and Catherine was home and she was upset about that and everybody was making fun of her while she was extremely pregnant. I also was very triggered by Natalie and Mike, and they're from a 90 Day Fiancé, and there are not that many episodes out there, or even just like anything out there about how rude Mike is. Everything is about how Natalie is crazy. And same with Catherine. There's so much during that time about how they're crazy, but both of those situations were highly emotionally abusive. And the progression that I've seen from Colleen through this season of Love and Blind is insane. And I watched the reunion last night, and I think that I'm still probably a little shaky from just seeing how scared she was. And I wanted to talk about that because I don't know that I guess because there are a lot of things on the internet right now that are making it seem like this is normal when it's not. And if you look at any of the photos posted by Colleen or by Netflix, there's a lot of comments about blink if you need help, post a ballet video if you need help. Are you okay? So some people are seeing it, but not completely. And so I have watched the fight scene from episode 5 several times, and my stomach drops every single time. This was the episode at the pool when Colleen and Cole connect. I imagine if you're listening to this episode again that you've been watching Love is Blind, so I'm not going to go through the ins and outs. And if you're curious about it, I would just recommend watching it. But the trigger of this interaction was when Matt observed Colleen and Cole talking, and Colleen later told Matt what they discussed, as most participants do when they finally meet in person. And Colleen and Cole were obviously into each other at one point. I think that they thought that they could be together. They are on a freaking reality show about finding love. So obviously when they connect in person, they had an emotional connection. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with talking about that. That might actually bring closure to them. Matt became very angry and jealous with Colleen, which led to their first blowout. And this is in which they were at the dinner table and Matt was engaging in verbally abusive behaviors. He was controlling, unempathetic, sarcastic. He was basically like stabbing his meat with the knife. Like he was not engaging in a conversation that, one, understood the reality of the situation. That is, you're on a reality TV show. Colleen was talking to Cole. They talked for a few minutes. Whether or not that conversation was appropriate, inappropriate, hurt his feelings, it doesn't matter. What matters is that this was not coming from a place of understanding. And there are ways to express feelings of disappointment without scaring somebody. Colleen needed to excuse herself and went to the bathroom. She collects herself, and he came in to talk to her and was standing very aggressively. And again, not approaching the conversation from a place of, how can we work this out? It was from a place of, you're wrong. I was concerned with how he discussed their fight the following day when he was talking to the cameras and explains it as, we weren't able to communicate and it wasn't a big deal as we made it out to be. And I was just sitting there thinking, we? Who the fuck is we? He puts the blame on both of them instead of taking responsibility for his behavior and puts up a wall. In a healthy communication pattern, somebody would approach these kinds of disagreements to solve it and resolve it. And in this situation, Colleen was really not able to say how she felt. In fact, I believe he saw her distress and he became more aggressive. He also threatens to pack up his bags, which is not the first time that we see that, but that's a sign of abuse because it keeps the other person on their toes constantly if this person's just going to leave. And if this was just a one-time thing, it would be a one-time thing, but it's not the only time that this happens. And I understand that for Matt, he came into this whole thing with some trauma. He was cheated on. It does affect his perception. But he seems to be unaware of the specific behavior that is very common. And I think that for Colleen to have a conversation with Cole or with anybody, even if it is on camera, it's okay. They basically just said, we would be attracted to each other in the outside world. Cole admitted that he was feeling conflicted. I think for the situation they're in, this is completely normal. It's probably important to talk about those things and think about those things before you commit to marrying somebody. And so my issue is that Colleen seemed to really believe that it was her fault and that it was okay for Matt to be so explosively possessive. And so I want to just take a second and look at this through the cycle of abuse because this is why it's been so triggering to me. The cycle of abuse has 4 steps. I do talk about the cycle of abuse in other podcasts. I will link it at the bottom of this one. It is tension rising, abusive incident, reconciliation, and calm. That's the cycle of abuse. In the honeymoon phase, which is the calm, it's sunshine, it's rainbows, it's love bombing. If we look back at the early episodes, Matt obviously was love bombing her, saying that, you're the only one for me. I only have eyes for you. And then tension begins to rise. This is like the conversation between Colleen and Cole. It triggers Matt's insecurity and jealousy. You watch him be irrational there. He's irrational at dinner. He's irrational during the conversation. And then there's the incident. In this case, Matt lashes out. He yells. He accuses Colleen of being disloyal and coldly disengaging as a punishment, which is called stonewalling. She's obviously in distress. She goes to the bathroom. She's crying. She can't talk to the camera. And she tries to talk to him while he threatens to end the relationship. And basically, we don't actually see in that episode that it doesn't end, but that, like I said before, is a sign of abuse because it's basically like holding the carrot over and, and being like, I'm going to leave. I'm going to take this away if you don't do what I want you to do. And then, of course, they reconcile. Colleen tries to apologize and fix things. She takes full responsibility. She blames herself for not being firmer with Cole. I actually believe that she thinks that everything that she did was wrong. Matt frames the fight as both of them just not communicating and does not acknowledge his problematic behavior. We don't know if he apologized, but since we don't end up seeing any apologies, I imagine that he didn't. They return to being lovey-dovey, which is when they re-enter calm. And I guess Colleen seems happy and relieved to be in a good place, but she doesn't confront him on how he behaved and how she wants conversations around conflict to go moving forward. And so this is the same exact thing that happens when the couples go out. Zanab and Matt get into a conversation. Matt is elevated. They go home. Colleen goes out with the girls. In a later episode, she says that like they just got into one Uber, the guys got into another Uber, the girls all go out, the guys went home. They all thought the guys were coming, but they're there, they're partying, they're probably drunk, because they were all at this thing but a few minutes before. And he freaks out that it's a Wednesday at 2 a.m. and she's not home. She's out with the girls from the show. They were filming. They had to film this thing together. I don't imagine everybody had work the next day if they're in the middle of filming something like this. And also, what's the huge issue? It's a Wednesday. Who the hell cares? They're on a reality TV show. She's out with the girls that are literally in the show. So Matt, again, packs all his bags. It's a sign of abuse. He's clearly so angry. He's calling her like a crazy person. When the person consistently is putting the end of the relationship on the table, it's emotional abuse. Every single time his bags are packed. And I literally hope that he takes his bags and walks out the door and goes directly to therapy, because that is so unhealthy. It's okay to not agree with her behavior. It's okay to believe that, all right, maybe she should have communicated better or realized he wasn't there or called or whatever. It's not okay to react in anger all the time. Reacting in any situation with anger due to not understanding even why it happened is just not okay. And then he does this thing where he shuts down and refuses to listen to her. And that's not okay. And so there's one other scene that's very clear, and it's very much like these other ones. It's their dinner before the wedding. Over dinner, Matt asks Colleen if she's sure or not sure about getting married. I understand that this, and this is a time where they can have these conversations, they could have these questions, they can have this dialogue. But when he asked that question, I was looking at Colleen and I almost felt like she couldn't vulnerably and honestly answer. It almost felt like a test. And I think from being in emotionally abusive situations before, I have felt that a lot. I just don't know if shit hits the fan, you'll be there, is what she responds to him with. It's a valid point, he says. Maybe it's me not being able to express my feelings as much as you have to me. I might not be that good at expressing my emotion because I've shut down for too long. And he continues down this spiral of maybe it's me, I'm just not good at this, I'm not as good as you, you are this. And I start to think like, is he trying to connect with her and open up? And then it turns into a more abusive tone of like, maybe I can't do this. Maybe I'm just not as good as you. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, don't set this girl up for this. He then asks a question that would have made anybody freeze. And she goes, he goes, sorry, is love enough to get married? And Colleen was visibly struggling. She then admits that she was struggling with the question of, is love enough? And he stares at her. He even says, Colleen, stop playing games. Honestly, I don't think she's playing any games. I think she was confused and lost and didn't know how to answer that question because there was clearly a right answer and a wrong question to him. She goes, shouldn't it be? And Matt pressed her again. And while she was struggling to find words, he says, say it with a smile smirk that if you're listening to this, I'm sure you can imagine it. It's like that smile smirk of like, I know I got you. I fucking hate it. And when people have done that to me in relationships, that I immediately shut down. She eventually says at that moment, love alone wouldn't be enough for her to say yes at the altar. And we don't see what happens. Matt's level of self-awareness or lack of self-awareness is insane. He, again, in a lot of these conversations or in this show, we see the other person coming back, acknowledging their faults, talking about what they think. I don't think I ever once saw a screen grab or whatever of Matt saying, I'm really fucking up. I'm really sorry. I have some really toxic behaviors and I want to work on it. The minute this is over, I'm going right to therapy, or I'm getting anger management, or the way that I talk to you is inappropriate and I'm sorry. Yet he admits to his friends at the bachelor party that he felt like he was self-sabotaging. And his friends encourage him not to ruin things if he loved her. But again, I don't ever hear him express humbly and with an apology to Colleen. He doesn't even do it at the reunion. Cole gets dragged during the reunion. Bartise gets dragged during the reunion. Why not Matt? Like, I'm looking over at Alexis and Brennan, who, like, are calm, and you can tell by their body language that they feel good to be around each other. And then you look over at Colleen, and she looks terrified. She looks actually extremely dysregulated, scared, and worried. She also doesn't look like she can speak for herself. And so today, Netflix posts basically a screen grab of a scene, and I'll find a way to link this too so you can see what I'm talking about. But it's the scene from the time right before the wedding, and it says, even though we've had so many up and downs, you know how you're on a roller coaster and you're like, one more time, I don't want to get off this ride. Netflix writes, love is a roller coaster. And I'm just sitting here like, what the actual fuck? Why are we enabling abuse? Like, is it just me? It's not just me, because according to the internet and TikTok, a lot of people are fired up about this. But here are 4 of the comments that people posted on this Instagram. Has anyone checked on her? Is she good? Because she looked really uncomfortable at the reunion. Anyone else super shocked they actually got married? Colleen, blink twice if you need help. Is she okay? And so the reason that I think that I wanted to do this and that I have spent a lot of today thinking about it is because we should not be normalizing this type of behavior. We should not be normalizing that love is a roller coaster. This is abuse. It's unacceptable. And even if there was an abusive behavior happening that we saw, and we just saw the light in her eyes dim, if we just all saw how scared she was, I think that would be enough to be like, what is going on here? And it wasn't even questioned, and I don't know why. If it's almost like if you can reasonably predict somebody's reactions, which I think we all can for Matt, and we're not reasonably predicting that he's going to be calm and caring, that's a huge red flag. And so I guess I'm just going to end with that. Some signs of emotional abuse are exactly what we see in Colleen. Her body is tense. Her breathing seems to change. Her heart looks like she's racing. She's stiff. She's anxious. She barely smiles, and she was hands down the most bubbly person throughout the whole season. If somebody in your life is presenting that way, if somebody in your life is apologizing for getting emotional and crying, you should be worried about them. I believe the show does have an ethical obligation to address it and to not post things like love is a roller coaster, because I don't think that that's what we should be promoting, especially to a wide audience. I think that if we saw one-time true accountability from that, I might see differently, but instead I'm actually really worried about this situation, and I am glad that Colleen is not living with him. So that's the end of my rant. I'm going to step off my soapbox. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry for ranting at you. I'd love to talk about this though. So if you resonate with this, please comment below. You can email me, jessica@jessicaknightcoaching.com. I have been blowing up my TikTok at Emotional Abuse Coach with this. And again, if you're either super triggered by this, if you're noticing yourself in it, if you notice a friend in some of the behaviors that you're seeing in Colleen, please reach out and get the support that you need. And not that I think it will go anywhere, because I'm sure she got 500 DMs. I'm just going to name it. I also sent her one saying that I'd be happy to chat if she needs support.